The book I returned kept checking itself back out. I found the book wedged behind a radiator in the university library's third-floor study room. Someone must have dropped it and it slid back there, probably years ago based on the dust. The cover was plain burgundy cloth with no title, and when I opened it, I saw it was a journal. Handwritten entries dated back to 1987. I should have turned it into the front desk. Instead, I started reading. The entries were mundane at first. Someone named Marcus writing about his thesis research, complaints about his advisor, observations about other students, but around entry 30 the tone shifted. He started writing about finding the journal itself, about how it had been left in his carrel with a note that said, "Your turn." That made me flip back to the beginning. The first entry wasn't by Marcus. It was signed by someone named Teresa, dated 1987, and it was also about finding the journal. She discovered it in the biography section, tucked behind a book about Antarctic explorers. I sat there for 20 minutes working backward through the entries. 7 different people had written in it, each one found it somewhere in the library, each one wrote about their lives for a while, and each one's entries just stopped, usually mid-sentence, always without explanation. The last entry was dated 3 weeks ago. A student named Priya had been writing about her roommate troubles. The final line read, "I'm going to talk to her tonight," and just that was it. The rest of the page was blank. I closed the journal and looked at the due date slip pasted inside the back cover, except it wasn't a due date slip. It was a checkout card, the old-fashioned kind libraries used to use before computers. 7 names were written on it in different hands. The last one said Priya Kashyap with a date 3 weeks ago. My hands were shaking a little as I grabbed my bag. I'd return it to the circulation desk and let them figure out what to do with it. But when I got downstairs, the student worker took one look at the journal and said it wasn't in their system. No barcode, no catalog number, probably someone's personal notebook they'd lost. "Just leave it at the lost and found," she said, already turning back to her screen. I kept it instead. I told myself I'd try to find Priya, return it to her directly. That night in my apartment, I read through the whole thing again. All 7 people had been graduate students. All of them had found the journal in different spots around the library. And all of them had written in it like they were compelled to, like they couldn't help documenting their lives once they'd started. The entries got personal fast. Fears, secrets, things you wouldn't tell anyone. Marcus wrote about stealing his roommate's research. Teresa wrote about lies she'd told to get her fellowship. Each person's handwriting started neat and deteriorated into something frantic by their final entries. I put the journal in my desk drawer and tried to sleep. The next day I looked up Priya Kashyap in the student directory. There was no one by that name currently enrolled. I checked the registrar's office records I could access as a teaching assistant. She'd withdrawn from the university 3 weeks ago, no forwarding information. I didn't open the journal again for 2 days. But on the 3rd night I took it out. My hand was reaching for a pen before I'd consciously decided to write. I told myself I'd just add one entry, document that I'd found it, explain what I'd learned about the previous writers, close the loop. I wrote 3 pages that night about my research stress, about the funding that might not come through, about my advisor who barely remembered my name. It felt good to write it down, cathartic. I wrote again the next night, and the next. A week passed. I'd filled 15 pages. The journal sat on my nightstand now, and I'd catch myself thinking about what I'd write before I even got home each day. Small things that happened, observations, fears I hadn't known I'd been carrying. Then I noticed the checkout card had changed. My name was on it now. Owen Matthews in my own handwriting, though I'd never touched that card. The date next to it was from a week ago, the day I'd started writing. I flipped through the journal with numb fingers. My entries were still there. But there was something new. On the page after my most recent entry, someone had started writing, different handwriting, neat, careful letters. It was dated today, and it was about me. "Owen seems stressed," it read. "He keeps looking over his shoulder in the library. I don't think he's sleeping well. I wonder if he'll figure it out." Before the entry stopped there. The rest of the page was blank. I slammed the journal shut and shoved it in my bag. I'd burn it, throw it away. Whatever it took to be done with this. But that night I opened it again. I don't know why. The new entry had continued, the same handwriting picking up mid-sentence. Before he realizes the journal isn't recording his life, it's prescribing it. Everything Owen has written in here has already happened to him. He thinks he's documenting, but he's reading. The journal shows him what to notice, what to feel, what to fear. My mouth went dry. I flipped back through my entries. I'd written about my advisor forgetting my name 2 days ago. But had that actually happened before I wrote it, or had I only noticed it afterward? I'd written about the funding issue. But had I checked the funding before writing that or after? I couldn't remember. The sequence felt jumbled. I turned back to the new entry. There was more now. The others didn't figure it out. They wrote themselves into corners, documented fears until the fears became real, narrated their lives until there was nothing left to narrate but the ending. Teresa wrote about failing. Then she failed. Marcus wrote about being caught. Then someone caught him. Priya wrote about disappearing. And then I stopped reading. My hands were shaking hard enough that the words blurred. I grabbed a pen and started writing directly below that entry. My handwriting looked frantic, nothing like the neat script I'd started with a week ago. This isn't real. Someone is messing with me. Someone found this journal and is adding to it as a prank. I'm going to find out who. I underlined that last sentence twice. Then I left the journal open on my desk and went to bed. In the morning there was more. The mystery writer had responded directly below my words. Owen thinks it's a prank. He doesn't want to believe the journal can write itself, can anticipate him, can guide him toward his own ending. He'll spend today trying to prove someone else is doing this. He'll ask his roommate if anyone's been in his room. He'll check for hidden cameras. He'll convince himself there's a rational explanation. But tonight he'll write again. He won't be able to help it. And he'll write about the thing he's most afraid of, the thing he hasn't told anyone. Once he writes it down, it will become true. That's how the journal works. That's how it's always worked. I read that paragraph 4 times, then I grabbed the journal and ran. I took it back to the library. I found the exact spot behind the radiator where I discovered it and I wedged it back there. I pushed it as far as I could reach into the shadows and dust where maybe no one would find it for years. Then I went home and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't stop thinking about that last line in the mystery entry. The thing I was most afraid of, I knew exactly what it was. It was the same fear that had been growing in me for months, the one I'd been trying to ignore. The fear that I wasn't good enough for this program, that I'd made a mistake coming here, that eventually everyone would realize I didn't belong. I hadn't written about it in the journal. I'd specifically avoided it, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it. The fear sat in my chest like a stone. 3 days later, my advisor called me into her office. She was kind about it. She said the program wasn't a good fit, that maybe I should consider taking a leave of absence, that she could write me a recommendation for a different path. I nodded through the whole conversation. Afterward, I walked back to the library. I don't know what I plan to do. Retrieve the journal maybe, destroy it for real this time, but when I reached behind the radiator, it wasn't there. I got down on my hands and knees and felt around in the dust. Nothing. Someone had already found it. Someone had already taken it home. Someone was probably reading through the entries right now, including mine. I pictured them getting to the end, seeing their own name appear on the checkout card, starting to write. I left the library and walked home in the dark. When I got to my apartment, there was a package waiting outside my door, no return address. Inside was a burgundy cloth journal. The cover was pristine, no wear or dust. When I opened it, the pages were blank except for a checkout card pasted inside the back cover. My name was already on it, Owen Matthews, today's date. And below it, in handwriting I didn't recognize, someone had written, "Your turn." I'm writing this now because I can't help it, because the journal is open on my desk and the pen is in my hand and the words keep coming. I know what happens next. I've read enough of the other entries to understand. I'll write until there's nothing left to write. Until the journal decides my story is finished. The fear I was most afraid of came true, but that's not the ending. That's never the ending with this journal. The ending is what comes after, the thing I'll write about tonight and tomorrow and the next day, the thing I haven't thought of yet but will soon, the thing that will become real the moment I put it on the page. I just flipped forward through the blank pages. Near the end, there's an entry already written. The date is 3 weeks from now. The handwriting starts as mine and deteriorates into something I don't recognize. I only read the first line before I closed the book. It said, "I should have burned it when I had the chance, but now it's too late." The sentence doesn't finish. But I know I'm going to write it anyway. I'm going to write everything that leads up to that moment, and when I do, it will all become true. The journal is still open in front of me. I should close it. I should throw it away. I should do anything except pick up this pen, but I'm already writing. Drop your verdict in the comments. Wait, what?